going big with the political stories of the day. We'll get to interrogate some of these stories and what it means going forward, even as we get closer and closer to the 2022 general election. It's not all to do with politics, matters to do with economy, even as schools are set to reopen as of Monday this particular week. Of course, a tough burden on parents in terms of meeting the costs of this back to school week. We'll definitely keep you updated on that. But even as we do that, we'll shift focus to what's happening internationally. And let's begin on that particular note, what is transpiring on the international news sites. And one of the stories making headlines on the Daily Monitor, PhD students cry out as dons fight over jobs. And that is quite unfortunate right there, affecting higher education. More details on that particular story, even as women are barred from Olympics for being manly. There we have it. And that's definitely an ongoing conversation. We have the likes of Semenya who have definitely received some slack one way or the other due to that particular issue, quote unquote, being manly. Interesting developments right there. More stories from Uganda right here. Police officer shoots patient on Boda Boda en route to Mulago Hospital. Quite unfortunate, even as they cover more developments within Uganda. Over to the East African, the region's top stories: apathy, suspicion at China's new foray into vaccine diplomacy. And it definitely has impacted various countries, all to do with vaccine diplomacy. Beijing's charm offensive has been impacted by bad press, especially with its European and American rivals, saying the efficacy of the doses is not known. Interesting developments, even as African countries are clamoring for vaccine in the midst of vaccine diplomacy. World leaders meet to raise $5 billion for education, lobby governments to do more for school girls. And this will definitely have a positive impact in low and middle income countries, even as Tanzania is recording 176 new COVID-19 cases. Interesting to note, they've just received their batch of vaccines, and we'll definitely monitor what's happening in Tanzania, even as they've banned social gatherings within the country, all to do with following the Ministry of Health guidelines as they try to secure their population. Over to Rwanda today. Let's see what's making headlines on this particular page. COVID pandemic creates fresh opportunities for entrepreneurs. And there are many, including the youth, who've thought outside the box. Opportunities definitely presented themselves, and some ventures have turned into gold mines, opened up by the health protocols, like selling hand washing facilities, face masks, and hand sanitizers to stop the effects of the virus. German floods, death toll hits 180, of course, even as Europe and other parts of the world, including China, are reeling from the effects of what others call global warming. Floods, flash floods, definitely affecting various countries. More details right there. Even as Sierra Leone abolishes death penalty, how COVID-19 robbed me of the chance to breastfeed my son. Interesting developments right there. Make sure you're adequately informed about what's transpiring in the region. Over to the Citizen. Let's take a look at what's transpiring in Tanzania. Tough times for bars as government issues new tight COVID-19 guidelines. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of raft of measures have been given by the Ministry of Health, including social distancing. The government has officially banned concerts, festivals, and gatherings of any kind until further notice, in a bid to contain the transmission of the third wave of COVID-19. We'll highlight what's happening in that country due to the health issues, even as Mpango reflects on Mkappa's legacy at a memorial service. That's one of the other stories covered on The Citizen. Tanzania receives over 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine from the United States. A proper move right there. The Johnson virus vaccine or coronavirus vaccine from the US has definitely arrived in the country. A little bit of catching up to do, but we'll definitely monitor what happens there. We'll definitely inform you about what happens in other developments. Do we have the CNN World page? Well, we'll definitely monitor that some other time. But let's cross over to the Standard right now. And that is definitely on the front page, going big with the story, Jubilee Night Talks to clip Ruto Party. And it's all to do with the turnaround plan in the ruling Jubilee Party, where some members held a 5-hour meeting in Nairobi, nearly 30 members of parliament, who raised concerns over the president's party's dwindling fortunes and resolved to start campaigns to reconnect with members and check Deputy President's United Democratic Alliance. That's on page 6 of the Standard, making the front page. Also, they've highlighted Raila's civil service goal and how he envisions it. He envisions to transform the public service to make it more responsive, and the Standard has more details on this, and all to do with Raila Odinga's sort of turnaround. Recently, ever since he posted his 15-point agenda on Twitter, week by week, we've seen sort of what he envisions for the country if and when he will take office. Things to do with rural-urban integration, the strength of infrastructure and manufacturing within the country, building the Kenyan brand and all that. So more details on today's dailies. So we'll definitely get to highlight that in a way only we can. Allow me to introduce my panelists. Joining me in studio right here, I'm joined by Michael Agwanda, who's a political commentator. It's a good morning. It's great to have you. Thank you for making time.
Thank you.
Okay, we're also joined by Joseph Kioko, political analyst. It's great to have you. Good morning.
Morning, Joseph. Thank you for having us here.
Oh, well, that's great. A lot of political insights in the country. Let's start on that particular note. And we have this particular story that ran just yesterday night on this meeting held by a section of Jubilee Party leaders on the meeting that was held following a string of losses in President Uhuru Kenyatta's backyard, specifically in Juja and Kiambaa constituencies. Now, a senior political reporter, Jeff Kirui, tells us the meeting at the Windsor brought together about 30 members of parliament, a chief administrative secretary, and interior and coordination principal secretary Karanja Kibisho, with a mission to salvage the ruling party ahead of next year's general election. Take a look.
After 2 consecutive defeats in Juja and Kiambaa parliamentary by-elections, a county backyard of the party leader and President Uhuru Kenyatta, Jubilee Party is back to the drawing board. On Friday, a section of the party's elected leaders retreated to a night-long meeting at Windsor Hotel to craft a strategy to revive Jubilee Party. Among the raft of measures agreed include the introduction of caucuses to target regions and specific interest groups to turn around the waning popularity of the party.
And one of the reasons, one of the discussions we had even on Friday was how do we then empower other caucuses of other regions? The Northeastern Caucus that has Akina Kainan and Akina Shurie to now also create their own capacity to activate their ground.
The future of this country depends on strong political institutions that are founded on ideology, not just on coming together out of convenience. And that is the line that it seems the current leadership of the party is taking us.
Sources within the meeting say it was meant for MPs to ventilate in a candid conversation as they sought suggestions to counter the onslaught of Deputy President William Ruto's UDA in President Uhuru Kenyatta's backyard of Mount Kenya region.
If we allow our competitors to continue running ahead of us, then they're going to eat into the 50% we have. If we clean up our house, then we're going to eat into what they have.
But we must rethink the leadership within the party, our approach towards 2022, and who we're going to make friends with. So it is more than just rebranding. You can change, it's like if you change your clothes, it doesn't change how you think.
Jubilee Party has experienced dwindling fortunes a year into 2022 general election. The party has lost in all the parliamentary and ward by-elections, except 2 wards it has participated in since December last year.
We've had a lot of hemorrhage from the party, a lot of fights, a lot of intimidation and threats. and we need to rethink how the party is being led, because the dream that brought together Jubilee is still alive and is still needed in this country. It was about, unity across the country.
The string of losses jolting members into talks of rebranding the party as it seeks to completely cut ties with the deputy party leader and DP William Ruto. Some leaders have demanded the ejection of some top party leaders, including Secretary General Raphael Tuju and Vice Chair David Murathe.
We have lost confidence in the leadership. It's as straight as that. Both Tuju and Murathe, their days in Jubilee are over.
Jeff Kiroi, KTN News.
So no confidence in the leadership of Jubilee Party, even as they try and change the dwindling fortunes within the ruling party. Interesting developments right there. Joseph Kioko, add your voice to this. What's the way forward for Jubilee? I mean, the Kiambaa-Juja by-election definitely was a tough pill to swallow. Well, what say you?
First, let me thank you, Jesse, for giving us the opportunity to come and have a conversation about the week that has been in politics and the future about political aspirations and goals for this country. So thank you very much for the platform that you give to us, and also for KTN for this platform. I think we need to understand that Jubilee has been hemorrhaging. It has been bleeding. And there's been attempts to tell people that, guys, you're bleeding. You need to stop bleeding. Or you're in a hole, you need to stop digging. And every time people came out, these guys we see who are talking about the revamping were the ones who kept dismissing people. Remember there was a coin that was phrased that you can rent a Kikuyu, but you cannot buy. There was this feel-good factor that we know what we are doing. But even though there were telltale signs that showed that there is a problem in Jubilee stronghold of Central Province. Not Jubilee stronghold in Rift Valley, not Jubilee stronghold or perceived strength in other areas of the country. The problem was coming in Central Province or Central Kenya in the backyard of President Uhuru Kenyatta. The way they went about in suppressing or dealing with the revolt within Jubilee created matters. What is happening to Rigathi Gachagua over the weekend is creating a martyr out of him. And Kenyans love people who appear to be persecuted. What was happening to rebels, they even got a coin term, rebels within Jubilee. Yet when you look at them, by and large, they have never opposed any legislative agenda that President Uhuru Kenyatta has brought into parliament. They don't appear to differ with the work of President Uhuru Kenyatta. But out in the public, they have acquired a moniker that they are rebels. So the more they were persecuted, the more they gained sympathy, the more they went out and the electorate listened to them. So, and the losses was just a culmination of our general fears as a country that Central Province is not as what we thought. It is not under lock and key. And the advisors are many. It's not Raphael Tuju alone. It's not Murathe alone. There are very many people who have helped into inflating this ego that Jubilee is indefeatable or President Uhuru Kenyatta is indefeatable in Central Province. Now we are seeing a different reality. But again, we need to ask ourselves, so what is the end game of this group who are calling themselves Jubilee Reloaded? What is the end game of these people who have remained behind? If President Uhuru keeps quiet, then Jubilee is dead, as is. If he does not accept the demands of these people, and I don't see him ceding Tuju, because Tuju is also a cabinet secretary. So I do not see President Uhuru letting go of Tuju. I do not see President Uhuru letting go of Murathe. What I see is that these people who are calling themselves Jubilee Reloaded, the caucus that met, are creating a new avenue to bolt out of Jubilee before next year election. But this time they'll be saying, we've left out because not because we support Ruto, but because President Uhuru and Murathe and Tuju were not listening to us, and that is a shell. Let us form our own. This is similar to Ford Kenya, Ford for Dasili kind of a scenario they are trying to create.
Interesting. Agwanda, let me bring you into the conversation. Tuju just recently sort of gave the just concluded by-election a thumbs up, saying it's a sort of a stamp of authority that they got 49% of the votes despite UDA camping in the president's backyard since 2018. What say you about the clamor to sort of rejuvenate, rebrand, and give the party more life?
Well, as my colleague has articulated the happenings in Jubilee, I think it's an interest of the entire country to know what is happening in Jubilee because it is a ruling party. I know that Jubilee has got some really huge issues. And first of all, I want to say that to remedy Jubilee from its waning popularity in Central Province, they've got to resolve the issues between the president and the deputy president. Secondly, we also have to know that the deputy president and the president came together as a force to form Jubilee. In fact, you remember URP, you remember Jubilee Party, you remember many other parties, small parties that were told, wind up and join the big ship that is going to get all of you together. And so they did. And after that, we had the Jubilee Party that created the second Uhuru government. Soon after that, we saw a rift between the president and his deputy. In fact, deputy was his close friend. They called each other brothers. They adorned the same attire. They were walking together, sometimes even the same ties. And the country was filled with great expectation that their top leadership was doing so well, hence the unity and perhaps even the development of the country to the next level. Unfortunately, we saw an unexpected, separation as individual separations, as the officers and separations, as also friends. Now, that definitely had to bring a rift between the Jubilee. Remember when they were coming together, they had their supporters and followers. Both Deputy President had his supporters and followers. In fact, it is alleged in 2017 that he influenced a lot of voting, he influenced a lot of members of parliament to come in to be elected. He influenced some nominations hugely. And therefore, these people will die, to support Deputy President. That was the beginning of the problem with Jubilee. But as Kyoko has said, we said this in public, on national television, and we said that the problem with Jubilee is within Jubilee. But they came out and said, no, we do not have a problem. Just here's where the problem is. Our parties are run by individuals. They are run by, if President Uhuru Kenyatta today forms another party and he was running for president again, people will run to that party knowing that perhaps is the person that is going to form government. It's not by ideologies or philosophies. It's not by their track record. It's not by their integrity. It is by the clamor of who is going to support or rather form the next government. Unfortunately, that's where we are. If Jubilee Party is still not having a presidential candidate or a leadership that will steer this ship to the next generation without saying our party leader is President Uhuru Kenyatta, then Jubilee Party is going to be dead. That I can tell you for free. Because what we look at here is a presidential aspirant. And if this guy is going to form the next government, then we're going to follow him. Unfortunately, with President Uhuru Kenyatta, he's not going to run in 2022. And therefore, if these people are still, the Jubilee Reloaded, or whatever you may call it, if they still think that they can, steer the ship of Jubilee to the right course, it is unfortunate that it's not going to happen until they find an individual that says, I am the leader of Jubilee Party, and we are going to form the next government, and I'm going to run for president, and everybody else, I need your support. If that doesn't happen, it will not happen. Now, Jubilee is having the deputy president that has jumped the other side in UDA and has said, I am running for it. Hence, everybody is saying, if you're running for it and by proximity you seem to be so near to the power, most likely you're going to form the next government, we are with you. Hence the reason we are seeing the denting in Jubilee and also the waning popularity in Central Province.
At that point, Agwanda has just brought in Kioko, is definitely must be on the minds of the party leadership, because we've heard of claims of an impending transfer. The members of parliament are just waiting for the appropriate time to shift goalposts one way or the other. We've also heard of them building from the ground up. So tell me, in the future, and we well know of the history of political parties, especially in terms of their political survival, what say you, going into 2022, how strong will the ruling party be?
I think if you look at all other parties within the political sphere, ODM MPs will remain ODM MPs. There'll be no movement from ODM to... Even if it is there, it will vary.
Kioko, allow me to cut you short. I'll forward the same question to Agwanda just briefly. The future of Jubilee Party right now as we know it, what say you? Because we've heard that some members of parliament are just buying time, and you brought in that aspect that the DP, who's the deputy party leader of Jubilee Party, has one foot in UDA, or rather both feet. What say you about this?
Just two things. The 2022 general election is going to be a money election, unfortunately. And secondly, the 2022 general election is going to be also about who is forming the next government. There's a very high possibility that deputy president with the people that he's having around, with him getting inroads in Central Province, with him getting a huge support from Rift Valley, is a formidable candidate. But there's also a huge conglomeration of other, NASA leaders that are saying we need to have one presidential aspirant. How to have it has been the fundamental question that they are battling with today. We know for a fact, and I would say this for a fact, that Honorable Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, is going to run for president. That we can say for a fact. But we also know that for him to run for president and succeed, there are places that perhaps has not been his strongholds that he must go to and ask people to vote for him. Well, what we are seeing with all these presidential aspirants that are stuck their head and they're saying they're going to run for president in 2022, the battleground is not about who is going to support who and who is going to endorse who. The battleground is about the electorates. Unfortunately, a number of them who are thinking they need to come and run for president in 2022 are still waiting for somebody to endorse them, for somebody to support them, for somebody to take them to all corners of this country. I am not seeing all these presidential aspirants running in all the corners of the country and saying, we're only left with about a year. I need your support. I need your support. That we are not seeing, other than, Honorable Raila Odinga that has been running in places. I've seen little of Honorable Salem Davadi now going to Central Province. But what about other places in this country? Unfortunately, the country is not feeling the heat of these presidential aspirants.
Interesting. Kioko, I cut you short. Kindly add your voice.
No, I was explaining that the hemorrhage, the bleeding that and shifting of membership from different parties, you will find that ODM, there are few MPs of ODM that will jump, let's say to UDA. There are extremely few members of Viper who will jump into other political formation. So the party that today is bleeding is Jubilee. Majority of its members are moving to this new entity called UDA, and for that we must appreciate it. MPs are bidding time so that they get to that point where the movement in or out to coalitions does not affect their membership in parliament. They cannot attract any whipping or any kind of consequences that can stir future political interest. But the truth of the matter, that the bleeding that Jubilee is suffering appears to be unstoppable. It requires a major surgery. It can't be stopped by a bandage or an elastoplast. It requires very honest conversation to a point of even agreeing that Jubilee as an entity is not a viable option moving forward. In terms of now engagement and coalition discussions, there is this innate belief that going alone, Raila Odinga standing alone without the cooperation of Mudavadi and Kalonzo and Wetangula, or what was previously NASA, if he decides to go alone, he suffers a dent. If Kalonzo Musyoka decides or One Kenya movements decide to stand alone, they suffer a dent because there is a gap that has not been filled. There are numbers that do not seem to add up. Even the candidature of Deputy President Ruto, running as he is today, and although he appears to have a little slight head start, and that slight head start is based on the fact that it has only been him on the road since 2018. He's the only person who's been talking about the presidency. He's the only person who's been selling his perceived agenda. Nobody has been challenging it. So he appears to have a head start. But even Deputy President alone knows that without cobbling up a coalition of tribal chiefs or a coalition of tribal headmen to show up numbers for him, he still comes short of the 50+1 conversation. So as we move forward, expect many alignment. Expect people who are previously could not talk to each other to start looking at each other favorably, because it's a game of numbers. And in politics, number 2 does not make sense. What is important is who wins this thing.
Interesting. Let's talk about viable entities. And one of them that's definitely been put into question is NASA, or what was better known as NASA. Page 8 of the Standard has more details on the intrigues threatening to abort the NASA dissolution. Agwanda, what say you about the bromance between ODM leader and the Wiper Party leader, Kalonzo Musyoka? Of course, reports are emerging that there are people who are trying to push him to reconsider his position of severing links with the ODM leader, Raila Odinga. What say you? Is there a future in NASA?
I think these people know one another, Jesse. They've worked together. They've been betrayal from, one time to the other. I remember very well when, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka was supposed to work with, Honorable Raila Odinga. And you remember the watermelon story, and he found himself, that's in 2007, to be the vice president of, the former president, Kibaki. And people never expected that. And in fact, he was called names and names. And eventually, he sat for 5 years as the vice president of Kibaki. We also know that they seem to have had some agreement with the ODM in 2017, and they came in as NASA, and they worked so hard. That is the truth of the matter. They work as a team, and they wanted to make the next government. It didn't happen. But there were also some other, agreement that they made in terms of sharing the political, party resources that was coming from the exchequer, and there were, some lines that were showing that they needed to share this money, that any money that came to a presidential candidate would be shared equally. But the money that is coming from the exchequer to support the parties, and in this case it's just Jubilee and the ODM party, is based on the numbers of representation in parliament from the party. And so Jubilee is getting their share and ODM is getting their share. As to whether this was very, very clear that ODM needed to share this money with other affiliate parties that perhaps were not as represented in parliament as ODM and Jubilee, is still a thing that is out there for an answer. But I can tell you, Jesse, I really do not see how a Kalonzo Musyoka can work alone in this country and win. Honorable Ngilu just told him more recently that none of you here is able to run for president and win. We also know that Kalonzo Musyoka is a godly man. I don't think he does not know the influence and the impotence of forgiveness in this case. Even if they had a personal difference with Honorable Raila Odinga, I don't think that can be personal to an extent where they can never work in future. And I don't think in politics there are permanent enmity in this case. These people have their own interest, and their own interest in this country is for the betterment of this country. They've never had the opportunity opportunity none of them has ever had the opportunity to become the president, but I believe in their own capacity. I mean, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka has worked in government as a foreign affairs minister. He's worked in government as a vice president. He's been everywhere. I don't think in those places he did not make enemies to a point where he will say that I will never work for government again. He's still looking for that opportunity. Honorable Raila Odinga, the closest he's come to power is as the prime minister. He still wants to be the president. If they think that what they want to do cannot be achieved by a single individual, they will come together, Jesse. I still see a future. And I know what is being reported here is that there are some technicality and legal issues on whether NASA can come out, because Ford Kenya apparently is still having some wrangles. Yeah. And for that reason, they've been told that you cannot possibly delink yourself from NASA until you bring your act together. Your leadership is firm, because there are two factions of Ford Kenya for that reason. Right, I foresee a situation where Kalonzo Musyoka will still work with Honorable Raila Odinga. I see a situation where Musalia Mudavadi will still work with the Honorable Raila Odinga. I still see a situation where Honorable Wetangula will still work, and many other leaders that are supporting One Kenya Alliance are still going to work with Raila Odinga. There is no permanent enmity. But let me tell you one thing that I believe is going to happen. There will be great agreement. And I think because of politics of deceit in this country, every politician is fearing to get into any collusion with any individual. Okay. This must stop for the betterment of the country and for people to know that if we want to move this country forward, politicians can also be trusted. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Yeah. Our politicians are not being trusted. You support a politician, as soon as they get into parliament, you're the last person you want to get his call from. This has to stop, because what we are doing is we are training our kids to be disobedient. We're training our kids to be liars. Okay. We're training our kids to in an environment where they cannot trust what we say. When I have my kids and I tell them to do something, and then the next time they feel like that is not the truth, they say, but Daddy, this is what you said. I think that is how the electorates need to look at our politicians.
Let me ask you this, quite briefly. Do you think there's space in the current political discourse for a third horse in the 2022 general election? Agwanda.
I don't think so. I strongly believe that, as Kioko said, there's only one winner. But what Jubilee and Orange Democratic Party are trying to do, and more so the President and the Prime Minister is trying to do, of ensuring that everybody gets a piece of this pie, I think that's for the betterment of the country. My only problem, however, is when we tend to leave some other people out, then there's a problem. I strongly believe that you can have a strong opposition, but you can also have a strong government. I strongly believe that by having a strong opposition, and having a strong government, it does not take away the unity that these people are still supposed to have in the interests of the country and in the interests of the people. Unfortunately, the politicians have always been for themselves, and the electorates for themselves. That disconnect must be brought together, even if it means working with the opposition, working with the people that are perceived not to be in government.
Okay. Kioko, add your voice to this, even as you implore on your point on the third horse perspective. The future of the One Kenya Alliance is definitely in sharp focus. As Gwanda mentioned, Ford Kenya, definitely due to the ongoing court process, they cannot disassociate themselves with NASA. KANU is still with a working relationship with the Jubilee Party, so they have to wait that out. And we have Kalonzo, who seems to be still with a dalliance, a working relationship with Raila Odinga. So what do you foresee with One Kenya Alliance and perhaps their space as they're trying to claim it in the political discourse?
I think it is important to, without any shadow of doubt, to state NASA is dead.
Kalonzo is leaving?
NASA is dead. Before we get to the Kalonzo thing, NASA is dead. Okay. Just like a Code Coalition of 2013 died 12 months into the election, or 6 months into the election of 2017. Just like PNU died 6 months into the election of 2013. Just like NAC died 6 months into the election of 2007. So the history of political party formation and vehicles for power acquisition, these parties come together as a special purpose vehicle. That the true nature of themselves is that we cannot use the old acronyms, we cannot use the old taglines, because new actors have come in and they do not want to appear to have been swallowed or to swallow the other. So we need to agree as a country that NASA is dead. Today, as we stand, there is the UDA political formation, there is Raila and ODM political formation, and there is now this new coalition called One Kenya Movement, which is bringing together Mudavadi in whichever outfit will be, Kalonzo Musyoka with Wiper, and Gideon Moi and Wetangula. That must be clear. It is not whether they say we are doing it tomorrow, or we were to do it last week on Thursday, or we'll do it next month. That is the inevitable. They must move out of NASA, whichever form it takes. So any conversations with Raila, or any conversation that appear to prolong this death pronouncement, is just that. Okay. The patient is in a coma. The patient has to die so that a new one is reborn that is all-encompassing of all political actors that come together for 2022. But be that as it is, what is the value of a third way alliance? We have seen very many Kenyans wanting to run as a third alternative. In 2002, James Orengo was running with the SDP as a third alternative. We know the outcome. In 2013, Mudavadi was running as an alternate to the main political formations. Now, as it is today, nobody wants to be the third alternative in this conversation. And if you place yourself as a third alternative, it means you're looking really into forcing a runoff election. Okay. Then you use your number to negotiate your way into power. But none of those political actors today would want to invest in a process that tells them we will lose and then we negotiate. But I don't think our democratic maturity has gotten to that level. So now, on matters of Kalonzo and Raila, I believe that there is a lot of distrust. A lot of statements have been saying that have been demeaning to the characters of the leaders of both Wiper and also ANC. And they have come from the highest echelons of ODM. And then the question that many people or the leadership of these parties keep asking is if now that you are outside power, you treated us this way, you've shown us madharau, you've shown us contempt, you have treated us like the Secretary General kept saying one day, just because I'm working with dwarfs, I have to bend or walk on my knees so that we all feel equal. And yet these are people who've brought for you over 1 million votes. Right. You don't call partners that kind of words. So this demeaning attitude by the ODM leadership is what is painful and is what is causing people to start asking themselves, if without power you can treat us this way, what will you do to us if you win this presidency based on our support? Okay. And for you to resolve that, everybody has to up their value. What Kalonzo Musyoka is doing, he's upping his value. What Mudavadi is doing, he's upping its value. So that they say, these people you called dwarfs, we know our strength, we are going to run for presidency, this is what it means. And then Honorable Raila must start reflecting. What does it take for me to garner the support of NASA original of 2017? And what negotiations do I need to have with both Kalonzo and with Musalia Mudavadi, if it comes to that? And what demands are Kalonzo and Mudavadi going to place on the table of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, if he's the joint candidate, so that those misbehaviors do not reappear once we form government? So I think that's a healthy conversation. It is a conversation within the fraternity of NASA. Okay. Nobody, like I said another time, nobody should feel that because of these stringent negotiation tactics, people believe that the alternative is the UDA coalition. I don't think so. So
who needs who? Quite briefly, Kioko, who needs who more, if I may ask that? Raila needs Kalonzo and the likes, or is it the other way around?
They all need each other.
Unite or perish.
Unite or perish. That's a common statement, common thread that must be told by all people who mean well for this country. Unite or perish. If you allow it to get into your head that it is only you and only you alone, then we start the politics of post-election runoff issues. Well, and those are different dynamics altogether.
Okay, there are those who asked just to unite in order to avoid a loss. Is that reason enough? But we'll definitely monitor what is ongoing within the political space. Of course, page 8 with more details on the intrigues behind the NASA dissolution. Make sure you're adequately informed. Allow us to take a short break. When we come back, we focus on the battle for the hustlers, quote unquote. Raila Odinga has been quite busy on his social media accounts, sort of his agenda as we go into the 2022 general election. We'll highlight what he said recently in terms of the civil service. Also, we take a look at the cost to become a politician in Kenya. Is it locking out various individuals? That particular story has been covered in today's dailies. Make sure you stay with us. We'll be back after this short break.